Well, welcome back to the Ennea Summit. I'm here with Jeff Cook and T.J. Wilson. They are the co-hosts of the popular Enneagram podcast called Around the Circle. They have 11,000 listeners and just surpassed 600,000 downloads. That's awesome, guys. They want to put much of their audio content into written form, and so they began the work of creating a 5-volume book series, the first of which will come out next year. To let you know a little bit more about them, Jeff and TJ both live in Greeley, Colorado. TJ is an entrepreneur and business owner, and Jeff is an author, former pastor, and has served 15 years as a professor in the philosophy department at the University of Northern Colorado. Jeff and TJ actually have 3 podcasts, not just one, with over 200 combined episodes that you can go binge listen to right now. Their primary one is Around the Circle, like I just mentioned, but they also have an Enneagram and Movie Characters podcast, which I love, as well as a podcast called Start Here. If you don't want to take an Enneagram test, you can just listen to their series of talks on that podcast to help you find your type. It's kind of like a self-typing podcast. And over 2,000 people so far have used it already as a typing tool. So Jeff and TJ, welcome back to the summit.
Hello, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, today we're going to talk about, I think we've titled this talk, Relational Chemistry, How Enneagram Stances Affect Our Connection with Loved Ones. So this is the only interview talk that we're going to discuss stances and how that creates chemistry or takes away from the chemistry of our relationships. And you guys have done some extensive just research and observation in regards to stances. You guys have multiple episodes on your podcast, which I've really benefited from. So I'm super excited to hear the wisdom that you're going to be able to come and bring to our listeners today. So is there anything you want to say in preface to this conversation about stances and chemistry?
No, let's jump in.
Okay, great.
I think we should definitely start this. Like, if we're talking about relationships, we should definitely start with the one rule, which is don't type other people. So, like, if you were really into the Enneagram and you're trying to figure out your partner's type, you can guess, but you can't assign. And so, like try to, encourage them to figure out what their type is, because you're never supposed to type other people. Don't type other people.
Yes,
as mentioned earlier, there's a handy podcast out there for just such purposes.
Yes, it's called Enneagram Ethics, people. And what Jeff and TJ are not going to share is, the ideal combinations. So, like, if you're assertive, then you would be best marrying compliant, somebody in the compliant stance. Like, there's no ideal combination of types, nor ideal combination of stances either.
Correct.
Yes. So let's jump in now. Some people have never heard of stances before. And so before we even get into all this, just give a brief overview of stances, if you would, and why they are so crucial and important to this topic of love and relationships.
There's a lot of in and out in my mind in Enneagram. There's taking in the world and then how you respond to the world. Oftentimes when we talk about taking in the world, that is through our center. We're a head type, body type, heart type. When we respond to the world and try and get what we want, that also flows out of our Enneagram type. And so stance is a convenient term for really what is our primary energy strategy for getting what we want. Some of us are more assertive, some of us earn, and some of us withdraw to get our motive fulfilled. And that's really those 3 stances. So 3s, 7s, and 8s are going to be more assertive. They stand independent from the world. 1s, 2s, and 6s are more reactive. They try to earn what they want. Their energy is more external. And withdrawn types, 4s, 5s, and 9s, will take a step back, are more internally focused in getting what they want most. And so stance can be real helpful because this is the energy and posture that our loved ones are often taking in getting the things that they want most.
And paired with all of that, one of the big things that stance helps us understand is which of those three centers is least active for us. So for 3s, 7s, and 8s, they are actually feeling or heart repressed, which means they don't understand their own feelings appropriately, and they don't understand the feelings of other people. 1s, 2s, and 6s, the reactive types, are thinking repressed, which doesn't mean they don't think. It just means they don't think productively. They don't analyze the data and make plans to move forward in productive ways. And then 4s, 5s, and 9s, the withdrawn types, are doing or body repressed, which means we don't do the right things when they need to be done all the time. We don't do productive doing.
That's really good. And if you're offended by anything TJ just said, just know that much of this are things that Suzanne Stabile has worked on for years too. So you have to take that up with her as well.
TJ the 9 would love your confrontational email sent to him. He's easy to find on the internet.
I have really strong spam filters, so it's fine. Send me an email.
That's great. So so there's the body, the heart, and the head centers is what you're saying, and that's how we take in the world. So I'm in the heart. I'm a 3. I'm in the heart center, and so I'm going to be taking the world in through my heart or my feelings. I'm going to be using those to take things in. But I also, a 3, 7, and 8 that you said are an assertive stance. So I'm in the assertive stance, and so that's how I'm going to get what I want in the world, is by being assertive and kind of going after what I want. Yeah. And then you said, TJ, that I'm each of those has a repressed, so are repressed in some way. So I'm feeling repressed, and so that's going to affect the chemistry in my relationship as well, knowing which one I'm repressed in.
Absolutely.
So a lot of pieces here that can give us a lot of knowledge about our relationships. So I'm excited to kind of explore this a little further.
Yeah.
Okay.
For those in the center, the 3, 6, 9 are in the center of each sort of primary intelligence center. The way that we like to think about it is that these types take in the world to their primary center, but they don't engage the world from their primary center. So you use feelings to take in everything, but you don't. You sort of set them aside to move forward, to engage. In the same way, I take in, as a 9, I take in everything through my body, through my intuitions, but I don't engage from that same place. And same thing for 6s with the head.
Okay, so take in things with their head, but have a hard time, like 6s have a hard time engaging with productive thinking.
Correct.
Okay, that's really helpful. This is good. I'm learning a lot already. Okay, so let's talk about the combinations then. So assertive types, 3s, 7s, and 8s, relating to compliant types. So those would be the 1s, 2s, and 6s. And actually, before we do that, can you explain a little bit about what you mean by compliant types earning? Because I think that'll really help fill in some details, because I've heard people talk about the compliant types, 1, 2s, and 6s, as sort of being compliant, of moving with people in the world. But what do you mean by earning?
1s, 2s, and 6s energy is going externally. They are getting feedback from the world around them and reacting to it. And the one thing that 1s, 2s, and 6s want is to earn their, let's see, how would you say this? Each of these types want to be good, want to be, in essence, have a rule following quality to them. 1s want control, 2s want attention, and 6s want to feel secure. And in order to get those 3 things, they earn from the tribe, or perhaps 1s can seek to just be good enough, and that might be earning things in their own mind and heart. But that external posture of getting feedback from the world is a primary, whereas the other 2 sets can be more independent or more internally focused.
Okay. TJ, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks, Jeff, for explaining that, because I've heard you guys, you're the first ones that I've heard talk about that when I've listened to podcasts on stances. And so I think that's really helpful to know that part of the reason they're compliant is to kind of earn some autonomy, or earn the ability for other people to stand up for them. If you're a 6, for your wolf pack to stand up for you and defend you at times, that's really helpful.
2s and 6s in particular are going to really comply with what they perceive as the needs of others. The word compliant has been used for this set and applied to 1s as 1s are compliant to the demands of their super ego. That can also be the case for 2s and 6s. I myself am not a fan of the word compliant. I don't think it does enough to describe 1s, 2s, and 6s. I think reactive earners is a much better way of describing these 3 and the energy going on. They're externally referenced. They are reading the room. Here's to jump into our conversation. If you're an assertive type, it's often the case that reactive types will be reacting to your assertive energy. And so the energy will be coming at them, and they'll be doing some judo moves to try and get their own feel in the world. Whereas, so I'm a reactive type. When I engage 4s, 5s, and 9s who are withdrawn, most of the energy is actually coming from me. I'm intuiting their withdrawn posture, and I'm moving toward them because I'm reacting to their withdrawnness. And that's often how 1s, 2s, and 6s navigate the world, is having that kind of radar and responding to the world out there.
Interesting. And so I put a lot of assertive energy out there, and my wife, as a 6 in the compliant type or compliant stance, she reacts by doubting my plans and with lots of concerns. Yep. So is that kind of one of the dynamics you're talking about?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you weren't putting out plans, she would have nothing to respond to. So her energy would be going somewhere else. I think about a lot of leadership positions in organizations. You have a lot of assertive types in the top spot, and you have a lot of reactive types in the number 2 spot. And this is similar in a lot of the even romantic or just plain interpersonal relationships we see with these types. There's someone who's sort of the boss, and there's another who is almost the assistant or the partner that helps the boss get all of their things done or achieve their vision or whatever. And that is the dynamic of the assertive type who's moving forward with their own vision and trying to drive toward some future that they see. And then you have the reactive type who's trying to react to whatever's coming at them and figuring out their own place by definition of what is being put out in front of them.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So, I remember Ian Cron saying that he's talked with some 7s in Silicon Valley that were very entrepreneurial, like 3, 7s, and 8s. All of us are very entrepreneurial, and we can start things and have a vision. But as the company starts growing, he said that the 7 feels dishonored because now all of a sudden you have the reactive types getting hired to build the company, and they all have an issue with continuing to run after new things when structures and policies and all these stabilizing things need to be put in place. So there can be a lot of energy coming back at that 7. And so I just remember him talking about that and that making sense. And that's happening in our relationships. It's happening in marriage and our partnerships as well, that kind of energy.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit more about that then. Assertive types, 3, 7s, and 8s, with the compliant types, 1s, 2s, and 6s. Like, what is that sort of relationship combination going to look like?
As TJ was kind of saying, this is often an action-dominated pair. They're going to be doing things. There's not a withdrawn type here, And oftentimes, as TJ was saying, the energy of the reactive type is kind of grabbing hold of the shooting star energy of the assertive one. And there becomes that relational dynamic is going to be there. A lot of the energy, romantic energy can be there, but also friendships can be in that space, or work colleagues. You can see that there becomes a chemistry between the two of forward movement, of the 378 standing independent from the world and seeking to push their will forward, as it were. And the reactive type, who cares for, loves for, supports the assertive type, coming in, reacting, doing their serving, earning their place in the relationship. And that chemistry, that dynamic, can be very, very common, and it can get a lot of stuff done.
And somewhat on the more, let's say, unhealthy or less positive side, like assertive types that are in a poor relationship with, or a struggling relationship with, reactive types. Assertives can feel like that is a tether, that's something holding them back from reaching the goals that they are trying to accomplish. And on the other side, the reactive types can really feel like they're being left in the lurch, almost like they're trying to fix the problems before we move on, and the assertive type has already abandoned them, has already pulled them away from the task that they were doing. It's almost like being chased, like two members in a chase. And if there isn't good communication there, if there isn't good understanding that that's the dynamic, then it can always feel like one is trying to get away from the other.
Yeah, that makes sense. So 3, 7s, and 8s are, future oriented.
Mm-hmm.
1s, 2s, and 6s are present oriented. And I see that playing out in my marriage all the time, of me thinking about the future, or even sitting in a room with my spouse, thinking about what's next, when she's very much present, and can oftentimes feels like I'm pulling her into the future. Correct me if I'm wrong, but usually compliant stance people want to make sure everything's taken care of, all the needs are taken care of, all the details are taken care of, all those things are done first before we even talk about the future. Like there's important things to do in the present before we even move in that direction.
Yeah, all types have anchors in and can engage the past, present, and future. You're entirely right, though. 1s, 2s, and 6s are most comfortable, often exert their energy into the present. That's where that earning is. When you're with a 1, 2, or 6, oftentimes their energy is coming at you to respond to who you are and where you are. And that can sometimes feel overwhelming, stifling, but that's how they're getting what they want. So the 6 wants security and is going to let you know now, here's the thing I'm concerned about now. And that needs to be addressed now. And the 1 similarly, who is seeking to make the world better, they may have plans for tomorrow, but the activity often takes place. Right now I need to change these light bulbs. Right now I need to straighten up a bit. I need to feel comfortable in my body, and so I'm going to take care of the job right now. And so 2s are presently seeking to look after others, to help in order to get the love and attention that is desired. Whereas 3, 7s, and 8s, as was said, you're thinking about next Thursday as a 3 in order to win next Thursday. How am I going to ensure that I have the attention that I desire by winning next Thursday? 7s are already thinking about next Thursday, not because they want attention, but because they want to have opportunities. They want somewhere else they can jump, somewhere new and fresh to get to. And 8s don't want to be vulnerable. And so they're going to ensure that next Thursday they have carved out that spot where nothing's going to, impose its will upon them. That dynamic then creates conversations. My wife, who's a 3, routinely telling me what's going on next Thursday. And I'm like, I'll get around to it. I have a calendar. But reminding me, by the way, this is what we're doing in 5 hours. And I'm like, oh yeah. Yep, I'm on it. Common conversation, common part of the dynamic in our home.
That's so good. Any other thoughts before we move on to another combination? Anything more that you guys want to say about the assertive and compliant together?
I do want to mention a little bit about that repressed center issue because 3, 7s, and 8s are usually fast thinkers. They're quick and they're on to the next thing. And then 1s, 2s, and 6s are not fast thinkers. They need to talk about everything out loud. They need to put things out there to have someone respond to it so that they can see their thoughts on another person or on page or whatever. They need to have it external so that they can respond to it. And it can often feel like in the same way that activity and the motion is part of the dynamic of this relationship, it can often feel like aggressive, assertive types are too fast, are moving on too quickly for the reactive types. And it can often feel like for the reactive types it can often feel like for those aggressive types that the reactive types aren't going through the things that they're spending too much time on their thoughts. Like why do we need to have a conversation about this? Why don't we just do the thing that I just told you about? And that a lot of that has to do with the feeling repression in the 3, 7s, and 8s. Because they don't understand the impact that their behavior, that their actions, that their decisions have on other people. And usually they kind of feel like they can change the world according to how they see it. So this is my plan. Why aren't you just coming with me? Why aren't you on board for the, I've already thought about all the details. Like, let's just go. The feeling repression there can really have an impact on the reactive types, and the thinking repression can really have an impact on the aggressive types.
That's really good. Yeah, I think for the assertive types, and hey, we have all 3 stances represented in this trio right here, but just the present or past feels like quicksand. Like if I stay here too long, we'll sink. And you're exactly right. I'm a slow internal processor as a kind of self-pressed 3, wing 4. So I'm not I wouldn't consider myself a quick thinker, but I get really impatient when my wife wants to throw up the yellow flag and say, hey, this is a problem. I'm really concerned about this. Like my immediate thought is, yeah, let's do something about it. And I know we're getting into like the competency triad, the 1s, 3s, and 5s, and there's other ways of overlaying this, but as an assertive type, I just have very little patience to sit in the present and discuss feelings or to talk about the details, because I'm like, let's just move forward and do something about it. And the metaphor that comes to mind is, if we're building a skyscraper and someone comes to me and says, well, we got to figure all these safety protocols out first. I'm like, well, no, let's just build it because we need to get it done. And that's why talk about these things when we can just go and build the building. And then, a year later, the whole building falls and crashes. And that's when 3, 7s, and 8s are like, oh, I guess my spouse was right. You start seeing the value in slowing down and being more patient and those things. But usually it's like you have to crash and burn first before, school of hard knocks, before you figure that out. Okay, should we move on to assertive types then and withdrawn types? So 3, 7s, and 8s with withdrawn types, 4s, 5s, and 9s.
Seems to me that this is more of a yin yang kind of couple. It's the
seems like
immovable object, irresistible force kind of dynamic. That doesn't mean that this can't be a fantastic relationship to have, but there is going to be a lot of pull and push going on at times, and it just needs to get named. 4s, 5s, and 9s as was said, can kind of think about their feelings or feel their thoughts and kind of be in that space because they are action repressed. And as was said earlier, 3, 7s, and 8s are going. And often going is how the 3, 7, and 8 get their motive fulfilled. And so if you're hanging around, we're not going to get my motive fulfilled. And that can be a source of anger, frustration, etc. And so there that just needs to get named in terms of there's always going to be really a push-pull here, and developing tools to communicate about that would probably be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, and I would also say, like, adding to the idea of being body repressed, we're also intuition repressed. So that part of that withdrawal move is that the we 4s, 5s, and 9s need to spend some time with something before we know what our gut says. Like there's mimetically, culturally, we talk about like gut reactions to a lot of things, and 4s, 5s, and 9s don't really have gut reactions. We have to spend some time with stuff before we know what our gut says, and that is such a waste of time to aggressive types. They do not want to wait for us to figure out what our feelings are. So it's often the case that 4s, 5s, and 9s get kind of dragged around by assertive types, or even more of a tether. We serve as a, like, we're pulling them backward. We're pulling the assertive type backward because we need to be in this space before we know how to move forward.
Some of the things, especially in romantic couples, this pairing can be fantastic because it will shore up your repressed center in some ways. Assertive types do need to slow down, do need to create space where they actually do business with their kaleidoscopic range of emotions. That is what Enneagram at its best is about. Balance. Enneagram at its best is going to encourage us to shore up our weaknesses. And this is for 3, 7s, and 8s. If you don't know that you need to slow down and really take an internal inventory, that is the hard work of the Enneagram for you, my friend. Mm-hmm. So too for withdrawn types, you need to move. You need to figure out how to get into your body. You need to figure out how to love your body and have that be a part of your personality and identity, what you accomplish. And that's hard for withdrawn types. And so those are the 3, 7s, and 8s will do a great job of like encouraging, we need to get going and do some stuff for the 4, 5, 9. And again, that can, if embraced, that can create a fantastic chemistry. If you fight against each other on that front, obviously that's going to be the immovable object, irresistible force,
right?
Kind of pattern.
And as you spend more time together, I see that these types in relationship can learn where their energy sort of overlap, where like in this space we need the aggressive energy, so we're both going to sort of join that energy and move forward, and in this space we really need to step back and relax a little bit, and in this space we really only need one person who's going to step back so the other one can do their own thing, and in this other space we do need one, but the other, like there's a good balance to be had when this can be acknowledged and incorporated and engaged in a more intentional way of these two very different types sort of learning from each other how to balance that energy.
Good. So the beautiful part about this pairing with assertive with withdrawn is like what you said, Jeff, the yin and the yang, assertive energy and more quiet, withdrawn, introspective energy, like coming together and one leaning on the other. You see that like the withdrawn types are attracted to the assertive types energy and kind of feed off of it. And then the people who are always going can look at the people that are more patient and withdrawn and really appreciate their sort of peaceful energy, their introspective, thoughtful characteristics. And it could be a really beautiful yin yang energy. I'm thinking more in terms of conflict, though. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the assertive types, in trying to get what they want in the world, can run over the withdrawn types, and that can not lead to sparks like it may with like a assertive and compliant stance. There might be a little more sparks, but it seems like the withdrawn types would probably just either dig their heels in when the assertive types are running all over, trying to pull them every which way,
Sure.
like dig their heels in, or withdraw, become passive aggressive. Kind of seems like they would create a sort of a flatness or to the chemistry. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I think all of us have tools when people are coming at us. And so 4s, 5s, and 9s have tools for dealing with assertive people. And so as was kind of said, there can be kind of a tortoise move. There can be a stubbornness that can be part of 4s, 5s, and 9s in terms of their how they react to those sorts of relational moves. The great thing about these two stances is that they both have kind of an independent streak. They can go into their own rooms and be just fine with that. Reactive types have a hard time with that, but I think 3, 7s, and 8s stand independent from the world and can often do things themselves without you. And 4s, 5s, 9s can go into their room and say, look, this is my space. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to sit with my books and do what you want. I don't care. And so that may be a healthy move in relationship of just saying, look, we just need some space right now. And everybody goes to their own spaces aware. But I think you're right. We need to be aware of, assertive types need to be aware that they can run over people. Mm-hmm. You got thoughts, Steve?
And withdrawn types need to be aware that some of their withdrawal is actually just avoidance.
Yeah.
Like if I know someone's coming for me, I'm gonna bail. I'm gonna go do something. I'm gonna go to the movies by myself. I'm gonna do something else to avoid. That's compounded by the fact that I avoid conflict at all costs. But even 4s and 5s, like it's much easier for us to avoid, resist, bail on conflict than to actually engage in it. And that does as much disservice as being run over.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, orientation to time. The assertive types are future oriented. The withdrawn types are past oriented. So now you have the future and past. Like, how can that help and hurt the relationship?
Real important, I think, when talking about orientation to time with stances, to think about it as tools. 4s, 5s, and 9s are using past tools to get what they want. So 4s are going to have an elaborate memory of the emotional dynamics of their lives that they can pull from in order to get the attention that they want right now. 5s are going to have a vast inventory of their knowledge of the past that they can pull from in order to get the security they desire right now. 9s oftentimes, TJ can attest, it can be kind of hoarders, but that is in part because they're collecting physical items that will ensure that they have, their space the way that they desire and get the control over their environments that they desire. Using those past tools can be, it's a massive library to pull from. 3, 7s, and 8s can skip the library, and they're thinking about tomorrow and books that haven't been written yet, as it were. And there can be a really great dynamic if you can come together. The chemistry, the complementariness that can come from somebody who's really anchored in the past and somebody who's pulling into the future can be outstanding if you honor the skills and superpowers of the other and what they bring to the table there. But obviously, if you're stuck in the past and it's ridiculous to have your head in the clouds and always thinking about the future, then there's a negative side to how they come together, it seems to me.
Yeah, I think at our best, like there's a place for, like, the space in the middle of future and past is the present. And when these two types come together, when these two orientations to time come together, they can easily meet in the present if they're trying to, because withdrawn types bringing the information that they have to the assertive types plans, now we can say, okay, what are your plans and what do we already know does and doesn't work? What do we need to accomplish now to get to the plans based on what we've already tried, what we know that we're capable of, what obstacles we know that we might face based on this information that I already have. Like there's a way that these two very conveniently meet in that middle presence place.
It's so good. Beth McCord was coaching me live on her podcast and about parenting issues I was having. It's sort of like a listen in to her coaching me about real issues in my life. And she kept asking me to look back. And I was like, no, it's okay. Like, and she kept like pulling me to look backward at my past to see how things have played out. And I just noticed for Assertive Types, there's a resistance to doing that. And so I'm really grateful for those people who have tried to get me to reflect more and go into the past. And I just remember my 20s and 30s. Like I did not want to look at history. I didn't want to look at being in ministry, look at things that were done decades ago or centuries ago, because it just seems like, okay, anything that we've come up with now is got to be better than what we did in the past, because the future is better and we keep getting better. And then I realized, no, we can keep getting dumber. We can keep, and
in fact, history just repeats itself.
Exactly. And we're just doing the same things over and over again, the problems. So getting context and looking back at history, I've just, binge watched multiple YouTube channels on how, religions got started from 10,000 BC. And I've never been interested in that stuff in my life, but I'm gaining a greater appreciation for the past to see kind of how we got here so we don't make the same mistakes. But it's taken me many, many, many years. And I really think of I can think of Beth McCord, who's an Enneagram 9. I think of, there's some really good therapists who are type 4s, and they really do a good job of in counseling sessions, coaching sessions to help you look at your past. And we need that. And when I look at you, TJ, as a 9, I think future. I'm like, man, you are a wise dude when it comes to Enneagram, and I love listening to you. And man, where's this going to take you? And I just have a posture of wanting to encourage you to move towards the future. And I think a lot of assertive types feel that when they get around people is they think future, and that can be really good for the withdrawn types.
Yeah, because I have no idea where this is going. I'm in a boat and I'm on a river, but I have no idea where that river is going to take me. So,
yeah,
luckily I have someone that I'm with that's like, okay, we actually have to row some. So,
yeah, you guys are a great pairing. Okay, should we move on?
We should.
Okay, let's do withdrawn types and compliant types. So 4, 5s, and 9s in relationship with the compliant types, 1s, 2s, and 6s.
Seems to me that this is the type of pairing. So TJ and I are this sort of pairing where they persist over time when they're in relationship. Often they're not just knocking things out. It's not like lots of check marks, but there might be a very thoughtful thing that is accomplished over time that is beautiful and wonderful and and worth embracing. It seems to me that I'm trying to think of an example. Your
podcast?
Yeah. I suppose that would be case in point. Neither TJ or I are feeling repressed. And so we're talking about emotions and working through those as part of the dynamic of our relationship. If when something breaks, it's harder for us to get up, get moving, get over the obstacle. But there can be a real valuable dynamic there of being in the moment, using the tools that, as we've been talking about, orientation and time, using the tools of the past to say, what are we doing now? And that's what we got.
This is also represented by me and my spouse. My partner is a 6, and like we said before we really dived into this, there's an energy that, like, if reactive types are responding to the energy of their partner, then they are going to probably be the ones driving in a relationship with a withdrawn type. And withdrawn types are typically okay with that because the responsive type isn't driving over them. The reactiveness, the external focus means that there's real partnership, there's real consideration there, and I have every I have no reason to believe that my reactive types won't listen to me when I bring something up, whereas I carry that sort of skepticism with me with assertive types.
Noted.
Yeah. so
That's
so
good,
there is like really interesting balance of energy there, because it's like a softer version of pulling us withdrawn types forward, and a softer version of sort of like calm down a little bit. You don't need to worry about that thing now with the compliant types.
Thing to build on that, the thing that hits me is I in my experience and what I see, I think withdrawn types are often the ones who are leading. Their energy is that which the reactive type are reacting to, except for when it comes to the motive of the reactive type. And so you'll see so I'm thinking of a pairing that's a 9-2. They are pretty lax until it comes to relationships. And in relationships, the energy of the two flames up a little bit. With TJ's relationship, the security seeking of his spouse who's a 6 asserts itself. And so that needs to be addressed, and that'll be part of the dynamic. But otherwise, everything's copacetic and we're fine. And with me in TJ, there would be, I have a handful of things I want to physically accomplish, and that is part of our relationship. Otherwise, we generally are, even keel again. And so whatever the motive is of the reactive type, I bet you is going to assert itself. But the withdrawn type, I often see, I suppose this, and it's going to differ from person to person, but I often see withdrawn types, their energy is what leads that relationship.
And I think to that point where there might be more sort of sparks, you were saying, with assertive types. I think with reactive types, the kind of complications that can come in can be much more severe. Because like with assertive types, they're gonna go. And when there is conflict, when there is like the assertive types are in charge of their own life and they're moving forward regardless. And with reactive types, when they come up against some type of complication, conflict, fight, and any kind of rift with a partner that is in that withdrawn stance, there's the withdrawn type either has to step up or it is a rift. Like it is a significant problem. And the demand there is so much more compulsory, I guess, because the reactive type has to have something to react to. And if you're not, from the perspective of the reactive type to the withdrawn, if you're not giving me something to respond to, if you're stepping back and making me wait for too long, if you won't make the changes that I need in order for me to feel safe or loved or good, then I'm going to go find that somewhere else. I can't get it from you. I will find it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm really appreciating this conversation and kind of exploring these cul-de-sacs or whatever you want to say, driving around and exploring more about these combinations than I've ever explored before. It's really really insightful and encouraging and humbling, all these emotions at the same time. I really appreciate as a assertive type listening in, talking about how withdrawn and compliant can really have good chemistry together. And I love what you said about being with somebody that you're not going to get run over by, feeling you're a team with them, you're kind of both okay, more in the present together, moving forward and kind of figuring things out. There's sort of a camaraderie, and that's no fear of being run over or not heard or acknowledged. I really appreciate listening to that dynamic. But then also what you just said too, the when the check engine light comes on, it's when there's a stalemate and you can get stuck in quicksand without an assertive type in the relationship. So that's really helpful to know too.
Yeah.
Anything else about this combination, compliant and withdrawn, before we kind of talk about assertive and the different stances with each other?
I got nothing on that, but I got lots of thoughts on the next set of pairings.
I did want to mention one more thing about the withdrawn and reactive or compliant. I think this is a slower relationship just in general, but it might be a more solid one. Like, thinking about the relationships I have with my assertive friends, they're bigger and they're faster, but the relationships that I have with my reactive friends are usually more solid. There's less going on with us, but it's usually there's a better foundation underneath us. And if we do come to those conflict places, it's more likely that we will try harder to deal with that conflict. Like my wife and I, we were together for 8 years before we got married. We were together for a really long time, and part of that was my slowness. Like, a big part of that was that it just took me time to get to a place where I was ready for that, and as a result of that, we encountered so many people giving us marriage advice about the first couple of years about how hard it was going to be. And looking back on that, it's like, what were these people doing that was so hard? I don't get it. It's because we had already processed so much of that in our relationship before we got married, that like the quote unquote big steps in our relationship just took more time, but we are more solid than we could have been if we had rushed into that.
That's really good.
Yeah.
You said you and your partner are a 9 and a 6. I see a lot of 9-6 relationships.
Yeah.
And my wife's a 6 and has 9 friend, a type 1 friend, and she's had those for life. A very solid and steady relationship. So yeah, I like that. Okay, let's move on to assertive and assertive. They probably won't have any issues in their first year of marriage, right?
That's right. There's a lot of energy here. We're talking about just the combination assertive, withdrawn, and reactive. The thing, the biggest bit of wisdom is you're doubling down on your repressed center.
Yep.
So 2 assertive types, you have 2 people who are feeling repressed. That can be fantastic on some fronts, and it can really lead to a crash on another front. So to 2 withdrawn types, you're going to have 2 action repressed folks, and there can be a situation where you're making excuses for one another's inactivity. There's like double no movement, as it were. And with 2 reactive types, the unfortunate thing with 2 reactive types is oftentimes it's like you're staring at a chessboard waiting for the other person to go, because you're waiting to react to what they're going to do. But what you're intuiting or experiencing with the other reactive person is them reading you and you're reading them. And so I've routinely found this recently, is that I'll walk away from a conversation. I'm like, why do I not connect with this person? That, we've worked in the same building for so many years together, and we just never do much together. Well, it's because they're a reactive type, and both of us are just reading the energy of the other. And it can lead to that kind of strange dynamic. So unless reactive types, unless you are achieving something together, unless there's like a third something that creates, something different, then if it's just you 2 in a room, that can be tricky. So it's just worth noting what the the repressor. I suppose with the reactive types, they're both thinking repressed. And so there may be a ton of verbal processing going on between the two as well.
But potentially without any actual processing happening.
Yeah.
Because they're just speaking their, like,
Yep.
they're essentially creating walls of thought that are keeping them separate from each other.
Right.
Man, this is good. Yeah, it's interesting. I think coming from, I know those watching, some are have a faith, some don't. Some grew up in church, some didn't. A lot of I've been 20 years in ministry, so that's where I'm kind of like pulling a lot of my life from. But I noticed that assertive types in ministry, oftentimes, especially in evangelicalism, get propped up as like the ideal ministry couple, because you got like a 3 and a 7, pastor wife, pastor and wife combination. Maybe the wife is the pastor with them, or vice versa. You got like assertive types that are like, man, they're out there killing it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be actually paying attention to feelings and cultivating a healthy relationship when people aren't watching. So it's just one observation of this can look like a power couple from the outside, of getting things done, doing crazy things together, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. The assertive as a pairing, like that can be a rocket and it can go straight to the moon. Like that pair can accomplish a lot, but also sometimes rockets explode. And sometimes when rockets explode, it kills people that had nothing to do with the rocket. Like the damage that can be done by two assertive types together, like even if they're going to the same place, the damage left in their wake can be significant. The damage that they do to each other can be significant because they won't even realize it's happening while it's happening.
Another thing worth saying here is that we've been calling them assertive aggressive types, but really they're also independent. It's really uncommon, I think, for like a 7 and an 8 who are married to actually commit to doing the same thing together over the long haul.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often. They probably go and they dominate the spheres that they want to dominate over there and over there. We'll get back together for dinner later. The power couples are the reactive types and the assertive types, because then there's a complementariness in which the engine gets going, where there's detail orientedness and the energy to move. But with two assertive types, it ends up being, I think there's more of that dynamic. It's like, you do your thing over here, I do my thing over here. We get together for drinks at 12.
I was co-leading with a church with a 7 and an 8 pastor. So there's 3, 7, and 8. So 3 assertive types. And I had to reach for my like self-preservation instinct a lot to be, the closest thing resembling a break.
Yeah.
And it was uncomfortable because as a 3, I don't want to be a break. I want to go. But they were going so hard and so fast that I felt like I was the one that had to be the break in in the trio. So it is interesting. Yeah. With that, the assertive types and the assertive types. Yeah. Probably need like a mentor or coach or somebody from the outside to help be the break for them. Like, they probably need to rely on mentors or coaches to be the break, because they're probably not going to break each other, like be the break for each other.
Both 3s and 8s are going to have a very strong, a worthwhile stress move into moving into withdrawn space when they need to break. 7s are going to try and fix things at 1. You elevating the high side of your stress number may be a good encouragement, especially when you're relationally thinking. That the two of us could be going. You just have to know that, especially with assertive types, they often will go, crash, and figuring out ways to know that the crash may be coming. So how do you live wisely so that doesn't happen? It's a worthy conversation topic for those types.
Good points. Okay, let's talk about withdrawn.
Can you take that, Teach?
It's nap time. That's just like it's amazing to me how comfortable I can be with other withdrawn types, but we are not getting anything done together. Like that's just we're not making plans. We're not like we may be getting things done on our own, and it may be in the same room, but we're not really working together because we're both fine with that. Like that's how withdrawn types are. We're fine sort of in that a little bit alone space. And if you don't need anything from me, that's great. I don't need anything from you. And it can be really nice. It can be very peaceful. It can be just like this is the space that I want to occupy anyway, with someone beside me that doesn't need anything from me right now. That's perfect. That sounds wonderful. But it can also be like we could melt into the furniture together, and like they find us dead in our homes in 6 weeks. Like that's like we're not going anywhere, and we're definitely not making plans for the future.
I watched my beloved mother, who's a 9, and my brother, who's a 4, live in the same house for a year, and just nothing got cleaned really. There was 5 dogs that were the energy of the house that made people get up and go outside occasionally, and just you just kind of, this is our space, and you dwell in your hobbit hole.
Yeah,
Man, yeah, I'm thinking of real relationships of, I know like a 4 and a 9, some 5 and 9 combinations, like 1, 4, and 5. And yeah, you need some sort of coach or friend group or something from the outside to kind of spur them on, you'd think.
Yeah.
But I also see the benefits too of just being totally relaxed in each other's presence, and
Right.
that being very peaceful. And I just picture like playing a board game together, or video games, or just chilling and enjoying life.
There is something about the motive that I bet you will peak a little bit. 9s want their presence to matter, and so there will be movement there. 4s do want attention. 5s do want security, and you can't just stay in, bunkered down in a bank vault, as it were. So motive will zap you occasionally on those fronts.
But there again, it doesn't necessarily mean we're accomplishing anything. I have a really close friend who's a 4, and we can talk to each other for hours and hours and hours, and like jump around all kinds of different topics and accomplish nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
We've had many people in our lives walk away from us repeatedly because our conversations, that we can talk about things that nobody cares about, and we're not getting anything done, and we can just keep going. Because that's like, my presence matters because he's validating my thoughts, and he's getting his feelings validated by our conversation, and like it just,
there it is.
There it is. But we're not getting anything done.
We can we can sit around and not do anything, or not get anything done. That is like 3 language, or maybe assertive stance language, in terms of our scorecard for what it means to be productive. But my wife, she's in the compliant reactive stance, so not in the withdrawn stance, but she would say that is very productive to sit around like you did with your friend for hours and talk about all kinds of conversational topics. Like my wife would die to have more of that from me as an assertive type. Like that would be a productive marriage in her eyes if we played a board game for 4 hours straight, or did a puzzle together for 4 hours. Like, so I just want to, I'm just saying that by means of encouragement, that even though it feels like to some people that's not doing anything, that's enjoying relationships. That's what it means to be human. And I need to have that vision of productivity, if that makes sense.
Not to completely poo-poo what you just said, but we come back to the thought
Come
of
on,
balance.
confront me, TJ.
Because my 6 wife hates these conversations. She is the first one to walk away when me and this friend get together because she doesn't care about literally anything that we're talking about. And so like that same kind of thing, like if you fall too far in one direction, it's a problem. But if you fall too far in the other direction, it's still a problem. So.
I love that confrontive energy, TJ. Just keep that coming. Okay. That's great. Any more to say on the withdrawn, or should we go to reactive and reactive?
No. My father and I are both ones, and so I like grew up with the reactive energy, and dated a woman for 3 years who was also a reactive type, and so I'm really familiar with that kind of energy. And again, it's the chessboard and just waiting for the other person to play. So, like I'm waiting for my dad to call, and he's waiting for me to call, and there's a lot of energy there, and it's but we're trained to read one another, and it's also the case, as was said earlier, the thinking repression is really going to color a lot of this relationship. It's such a treasure for me as a reactive type to have people in my life who can think quickly or think with depth, especially if they're patient enough to respond to me trying to process all the things. And so, but in a reactive relationship, you don't necessarily have that. So I can think of many of these relationships where when we have conversations, they can be great, but we don't actually get to the place the way I do with others. And it's, which is interesting to me. Especially, I was a university professor. You would think that this would be easier, and it really still isn't. And that's just been my experience. So,
TJ, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, there's the verbal processing, the externally focused, like all of the stuff that it's just such an interesting dynamic. And twos in that pairing, like if it's a two, that might help a little bit because twos are all about relationships. So they will spill their whole guts to you in order to bond. Whereas ones and sixes, like there's a little bit more of like playing by the rules kind of energy. But it's still the case that these types are always like it's almost like dancing with nobody leading. Like they want the other partner to lead, and if there is going to be any success romantically or in work or whatever else, like there has to be times when both sides pick that up. Like there has to be intentional decisions that, okay, today I'm going to be the leader. Tomorrow I'm not. You have to do it tomorrow, but today I will be the one in charge. And that sort of like making sure that you understand that you are doing the same thing I am, so we have to figure out how to do it together. Like that dynamic it can be so sort of hilariously stagnating. Like one of my favorite stories about Jeff is the first time he sort of really interacted with my wife, like long time ago when she was just my girlfriend. She gave him a ride home, and like it was just the most like both of them sitting there in awkwardness trying to figure out what to say to each other. And like this is one of my best friends and someone that I'm very, very close to romantically, and they can't have a conversation, not because they don't have similar interests, but because they're both reactive types.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out, like, somebody's got to drive today. Somebody has to.
Very strange phenomena on this front. The one place where this can be different is I see a lot of reactive types who are couples in nonprofit work together, or sometimes in corporate spaces, or teachers. I've seen a handful of teachers who, and in those situations, the job creates the energy. We're talking about what we're doing to serve these other people. And then the ball starts to really move forward in terms of conversation. But they're probably connecting over work. They're probably connecting over how they're earning the thing that they want most from the world.
That's interesting. Like my wife never like dated any ones, but she has a lot of one friends as a 6, and they have some good chemistry with each other, because like the one is, especially like the self-pres one, it's like, man, things are not right. and then the 6 is like, yes, there are troubling things out there, and they kind of connect on this, things aren't right with the world kind of level.
There can be on exactly that front. The one anomaly is that ones process with action, and so ones can be the instigator of movement on exactly these sorts of fronts. So the ones can kind of upset the theory that I'm kind of pitching here, but it's more if that happens, the 6 needs to get on board with what the one's doing. They need to find that the one's going to create a stable environment for them to feel secure, feel safe, and then they're invested. But they're going to have to go in on whatever the one is up to, and then the one's ambition is the source of energy. And I bet you nearly 98% of their conversations are going to center on what we're doing together over here to make the world better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the 6 sees all of those things. It's like, yes, the world does need to be made better. What can we do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really appreciate you guys talking about that whole reactive energy, like waiting for something to happen and then sort of reacting to it. So I've never thought about that in terms of 1, 2s, and 6s. That's really helpful to know as I counsel other people, or in my relationships.
Much better than the compliant.
Yeah. Well, what are in the harmonic groups, like the 4s, 6s, and 8s? I just end up talking with Krista Harden about that. I thought that was called the reactive group as well. Do you remember what that group's called?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Wild West still with Enneagram terminology, and some of the terms can get placed by this author to describe a set of folks, and this author to describe a different set of folks, but it's the same word because it's kind of has some utility there. This is an unfortunate thing. It's when you have multiple creators coming to the table and advocating for how they are seeing the system, then that's going to happen.
Gotcha. It doesn't happen too often.
True.
There's just a few times where the language, gets mixed up like this. So I thought about that, and I wanted to kind of clarify that with you guys. So that's helpful.
We lean more toward emotional response as a way to describe 4, 6, and 8.
Yep.
You have positive outlook, competency, and emotional response.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, we made it through.
We did it.
The 6 different combinations. This is a really good, insightful, just fun conversation. I know those watching probably feel the exact same way. So this is what it's like when I'm mowing my lawn, listening to your guys' podcasts, and like there's just a lot more where this came from. And you guys have over 200 episodes. So I would highly, highly recommend you subscribe like I did to their podcast and continue to learn from them. And I want to give some your social media accounts, and I'll put the links below. But is there anything you want to kind of say to sort of wrap up this conversation, or say anything in closing before we do?
We did a long series called How We Connect in the fall of 2022, 2023. It was one of those. Where we go into affect groups, which is 369s, 147, 258. How our relationships function often come out of those spaces. Stances is very important, but how we get the love that we want and connect with other people, that would be, if you want to take another step in terms of what Enneagram says about your relationships, that would be my next recommendation.
That's great. We're not doing affect groups here on the summit, so that would be, go to their podcast to go find that. That'd be a really helpful resource. TJ, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to double down on the don't type other people. Like if you are working on issues in your relationship, you have to work on it together. And if your partner is not interested in the Enneagram, then you might want to find other tools. That being said, we also mentioned at the outset that there is no ideal pairing. There is no ideal type. There is no that's not how it works. The best thing you can do is become a more healthy person yourself. The problems come from unhealth in our type. It doesn't matter if you're an 8 and a 9. If you're both healthy, you'll be able to get through things together. And and that applies to work, it applies to parenting, it applies to all of your relationships. Your best path forward is to work on yourself and make yourself a more healthy person.
Yeah,
That's
agreed.
good. That's good, TJ.
I guess I got one last thing, if I may, just piggyback on that. There's a fantastic resource from the Enneagram Institute, which does a pairing of all the specific numbers. So if you do know the type, if somebody in your life has typed themselves, actually, I think if you just type into the Google machine like Enneagram 4 and 8, I think the combinations are what pop up first. But if you can find the Enneagram Institute and their pairings of each of the types, they do a great job of saying, here's the dynamics of all of the pairings. I think is it 54 different possible pairings? Something like that.
Sure.
But they have that number of pairings, really worth going to. And by the way, our podcast is called Around the Circle. I don't know if that got mentioned, but
Yep.
but that would be it.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, there's some Dr. Daniels has combination pairings on his website that's free. It's really helpful. And yeah, you're right. The Enneagram Institute. Kristen Harden, who I mentioned her book, The Enneagram in Marriage, that has all the combinations in the back. And then Steph Barron Hall, who's also on the summit. I have her book, Enneagram in Love, and those have all of the relationship combinations. So just a few other places to find those. But yeah, very helpful.
Boom.
Yeah, what was I going to say? No, I just appreciate you guys and all the work that you're doing, and I can't wait for your book volume, your volume series to come out. I will definitely get that because I've learned so much from you guys just listening to you. And again, you can go to aroundthecircle.org. I'll also put the link to their Apple podcasts, Around the Circle, their Spotify link, their Start Here, kind of to help you type yourself, sort of a self-typing guide. I'll put the link below for that podcast. Also Instagram, Facebook, Twitter is below as well. So make sure to go check them out. And yeah, any other social media channels or links I'm missing?
No, we communicate mostly through Instagram of all things. It's just kind of been a good landing place for us. But aroundthecircle.org has all of our stuff.
Gotcha.
And we have events.
Go ahead.
We also have events in Colorado from time to time. So if you're in this area or want to travel to this area, all those are at our website as well.
The Greeley area.
Yep.
And then you guys have a monthly get together online with some of the followers of your podcast. Is that right?
We do. Yeah. We do a once a month Zoom, and then we do a once a month in person. And so if you're interested in either of those, we'd love to have you. We generally just pick a topic, go around the circle. It's mostly me bantering with, the 3 2s that show up, and then the 3 3s that show up, and the 1 4 that shows up. It's that sort of dynamic.
Love that. Well, it's been an honor to have you guys on the summit. And as a reminder to those watching, make sure to go back and watch all the other amazing speakers in the lineup today. You can watch all of them for the next 24 hours. But the good news is you can get the All Access Pass, which will give you sort of lifetime access to all these interviews, the videos, audio files, and transcripts. You can get a transcript of this conversation. So make sure to go check that out. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Remember, stay curious, keep learning, keep growing, and make sure to put into action all the things that you just learned from Jeff and TJ to transform yourself and your relationships. And we'll see you in the next interview.